Sorry about that, folks. My computer completely froze in the middle of prep and had to give it a hard kill and restart it. So we left off on cat. Cat, looking for it to hold yesterday's low, 191.5, 192. Push off of that to get back to this 193.8. If we can get through that, looking to get to this first Keltner up at 195 and some change, which would get back to filling the gap. But if we do roll back over and lose 191.5, we have the mean here, at 190.8, below that 189.5. And if we truly give that out to get back to where we were before CPI, we'd be getting down to that daily 50 at 186, 186.8-ish. Google. Google made it down to that daily 50, looking a little weak pre-market and overnight. Ultimately looking for Google to hold that daily 50, these squeeze bottoms, and to start pushing it back off. Let's see if Google can hold that daily 50, right around 113.9, 114, start pushing back off of that to get back to these squeeze tops around 115. And if we can get through there, trying to get through yesterday's high, the next squeeze top at around 115.5. And if we can get through that and fire to the upside through 116, looking to get back to 117 where the daily 21 sits, which would fill the gap. If we start to lose that daily 50, the next target down would be 111, where that next Keltner sits. GS. GS made it back, did not get all the way to the mean. So let's see when it opens. If we take out yesterday's low at around 340.8-ish, we can get down to this daily 21, just below 340. If we start to lose that, next Keltner down is at 332. But if we can hold yesterday's low, or that 340 in the mean, and bounce, first stop is to get back to the daily 215, 344, and if we can get through that, 348, to get back to the daily 8 and fill the gap. JPM pretty much made it back to the daily 50. If we're going to see upside, needs to take out 117, get back to 118 where the daily 21, daily 15 sit. Through that, just getting back to 119 would fill the gap. But if we start to lose that squeeze bottom at 116.25, likely coming down to the daily 50 for a full tap with that first Keltner down. Meta. Dropped down and consolidated around this 162.5, 163. So let's see if that can hold us up. If we can get through 164, we'll be firing that squeeze to the upside, looking to get back to yesterday's high. First around 165.5. Through that, we can get back to this daily 50 at 167.5-ish, which would fill the gap. If we start to lose squeeze bottoms in yesterday's low, then it's the next Keltner at 158.25. Microsoft, big dump yesterday, giving out that 21 and below 280. Looking a little weak and setting a new low pre-market. Let's see if we can hold that 277 and squeeze bottom. If we can get back above and through 279, 280 and 281, where the 21 sits, or the next stop. Through that, looking to get back to the 15 and the 8 above, which would fill the gap. But this is a pretty decent drop from 285 almost to 275. She might need to settle a little bit more. We'll see. If we start to lose this squeeze bottom, the next stop is 275, where that next Keltner sits. Yep, Netflix. Big old dump yesterday from 234-ish all the way down to 224-ish. So a nice 10-point drop. Looking nice pre-market, at least not setting new lows like Microsoft was. So, you know, relative strength, we got to try to identify it when we can pre-market. Netflix, if we can hold 225. Don't start freezing on me. If we can hold 225 where the squeeze bottom sits, and get up to and through 227.5, we'll be firing the squeeze to the upside. First stop 230 and that daily 21. Next stop yesterday's high back to 234, and then to this trend line where the daily 8 and 15 sit. If we start to lose 225, next stop 221.5, where that first Keltner sits. Nvidia. Little relative weakness here pre-market, getting close to yesterday's low. Basically made it back to the daily 50, but did not give it a tap. So let's see if it wants to take a dip first to hit that daily 50 at around 169 and a quarter, we'll call it. If we can catch a bounce there and get back above 171.5, we'll start firing that squeeze to the upside. First stop 173.5, where we rejected VWAP. Then yesterday's high, and if we can truck through that, 178 to fill the gap, where we do have the daily 21 just above that. POC on NVIDIA is currently established at 170. So it is just slightly above, but pretty much where we're at. So with POC being here in the daily 50, we could also just consolidate. If we slip that daily 50, we also have a a daily squeeze, 1 day squeeze, just below at 166. QQQ. Made it down through our zone, rejected at midday. Overnight, almost got down to that 311. So if we are going to roll back over to retest yesterday's lows or overnight lows, kind of expect QQQ to get back down and test this 311.8 big key level. If it can bounce there, or bounce at 313 at the squeeze bottoms, and get through that pre-market high at 315.7. Ultimately, if we can catch a bounce, looking to get back to this zone and back to the daily 21. It looks like getting back to filling the gap might be a 2-day journey for QQQ. And if we start to lose 311, next Keltner is down at 305. Roku, not a ton of interest. Let's see if it can hold 70. Start the journey back up to 75. Even if it slips 70, got a big old daily squeeze there at the next Keltner down around 68. Shop did nothing yesterday. And trying to defend this 32.5, let's call it 33. So let's see if that can provide a bounce, get us back above 34. The effort to get back to that daily 50. But not loving this name. I mean, it doesn't move a ton during the day. I mean, look at this day. Look at this day. Look at yesterday. I don't see how anyone's having fun trading this anymore. So, not going to focus on it. Snow with some relative strength yesterday. Actually bounced in that midday sell-off that took the market a little further down, only pulled it back to VWAP. So, and starting to get a little higher. She did have a couple of upgrades last week. And she has earnings tomorrow after the bell. That's right. So they brought it back to the daily 50, this 150. Likely going to have it, could easily ramp into earnings back to the 21. And then we'll see how earnings go. But definitely keep it on your radar. Relative strength yesterday. Very interesting. SPX. So on SPX, we pretty much made it down to fill that gap. Not completely. We need to get down a little further, like I said, to about 41.22.5. But it was a big gap up that we pretty much filled yesterday. We do have a couple of gaps below that as well that did not get filled, that we could extend over. So that if we do start to roll over, lose yesterday's low, that 41.18, we do have some gaps here from 41.10 down to 40.75. So if market does roll over, we do have a couple of gaps to fill there. But if we can hold yesterday's low and where we settled, kind of around 41.35-ish. So if you could hold 41.30, 41.35, that little pocket, and bounce, looking to get back to the daily mean at 41.55, then back up to our key levels above in that daily 15, which would engulf yesterday. If we catch that bounce for scenario 1. We could easily just bounce between the daily 21 and this key level, which would completely fill the gap. So we could get to that, or just consolidate around that 21 and bounce around. And like I said, if we head lower, got a couple of gaps to fill to get down to the next key level. SPY. Looking like we might get down to retest yesterday's low and these squeeze bottoms. So SPY. Let's see if we can hold 412 if we do get down to squeeze bottoms. 412, 411 and a half, that pre-market low-ish. Let's see if this provides support and gets us to bounce back through 414 with an effort to get back to 415, that squeeze top where we rejected midday yesterday. If we can get through that, back to our key levels above. The daily 21 does cut through right at about that 415 near the squeeze top and pre-market high. If we start to give out, that 411 and a half, 412 coming down to 410 and 408 where that next Keltner sits. Square. I got back to the daily 50. Could be a good spot to go long if we are going to get scenario 1 where the market ends up bouncing. So I'll keep it on my radar just a little bit because we could get a chance to load long from this daily 50 at 72 to get back to the daily 21 up at that 78.8-ish. Tesla. Got down to that 865 yesterday, which is where we took off from before. Let's see on Tesla if that 865 can continue to hold. We've got some good relative strength here, gapping up a good amount. So let's see if 870, 865 can hold us, get us to bounce through this trend line from highs. If we get through 880, the top of the squeeze and that trend line, looking to get back to these moving averages above from 892 to 900. And we got a nice up channel here. If we start to give out 865, 860, coming down to 850, 830, we do have the split on Tesla this week. So this is a great spot for it to base, and then take back off into that split. UBXY I don't usually cover every day, but it's worth covering. It has been pinned under $9.50 and $9 while we were up near the highs. But then when it broke back above $9, I talked about this on Friday, we could start seeing a sell-off. That's what we got. Now we're all the way up above $10. So as this goes up, market can go down. That's what we're getting. That's why I watch it for a gauge. If we're going to see more downside, this is going to stay above the daily mean, take out yesterday's high, and keep pumping to 10.5. 10.8 where that first Keltner sits. But if we're going to get our bounce, this will need to reject, setting a lower high, come back down below 10 to the squeeze bottom in yesterday's low, and start heading back to the daily 15, daily 8, back at 9.5. VIX. So VIX, we had that gap up. Yesterday I talked about if we're going to see more downside, we'll see VIX get through 23.3, likely give a retest, then take off through 24 to 24.5 and that daily 200. I like seeing that we got that rejection at the daily 200 and coming back below 24. So if we're going to see upside in the market today, we need to see VIX stay underneath 24. You know, maybe 24.5 for a retest, but that's probably going to be pushing us through squeeze bottom. Ultimately, we'd love to see us stay below 24, roll back over to 23.5, maybe even head down through 23 to 22.5, back to where this gap started. With the ultimate goal, if we are going to bounce and get scenario 1, to get back to the daily 21, daily 8, daily 15. But if we're going to see more downside of the market, VIX is probably going to continue to hold this trend line from lows yesterday. So definitely come in and mark this, just like I'm doing. That trend line will be important. As long as we stay above that trend line and start pushing back up, market's going to roll over, with the goal getting back to that 24.5 and 25, which would get us through the daily 200 and daily 50. But if we lose that trend line, it would be a good sign that we're going to see some upside. Normally that's it, but I see in YouTube chat someone asking for a few tickers. I'll take a quick look. I don't usually look at these tickers, but we'll see what the tools give us. Celsius. Well, interesting that Celsius took off from the main yesterday. Very strong while the market sold off. So it looks like they're moving into these silly names. It is in between. It is in the daily squeeze here that spans from 96 at the bottom up to 104 at the top. Smile Maker. There you go. Good to see you. So, let's see. If Celsius is going to continue to the upside, it needs to take out these highs around 104.5. Start pushing through 105 to fire this daily, I'm sorry, this is a 4-hour squeeze. To fire this 4-hour squeeze to the upside with the goal of getting back to 109, 110, where that second Keltner sits. But if we reject this 104, 105, it can likely come back to these daily moving averages at 101, psych level of 100. I was going to say kind of, it's interesting though, relative strength yesterday. I'm wondering if this was maybe Wall Street bets being silly. Because she did sell off with the market on Friday. But yeah, interesting relative strength. If it has a dip, definitely want it to hold these moving averages around 101 to play it up to 105 and beyond. Upside targets 105, 110 this week. Looks like she had earnings and a decent reaction. Came back to the 21 for a bounce and another bounce. So yeah, relative strength. Let's see if it can hold 100, 101, take back off through 105 to 110. Let's see, look at the next one, ENPH. Again, some interesting relative strength yesterday. Holding that daily 21 pretty much. Looks like it wicked a little below it, but overall, I'd say let's see if 280, 278 can provide support to continue to push this thing higher through 285 with the goal of getting back to 290, 293, where the daily 8 and 15 sit. Which would also be getting back to filling the gap from Thursday. If it starts to lose that 280, then it's back to this daily 21 at 275, maybe even yesterday's low, 272. And FLSR. Flazer. Yeah, that's taking too long to load, or something's going on here, so. Yep, gonna skip that one. So I'm just gonna wrap up prep here. Need to get those tools out. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Good luck today, and we'll see you guys in chat.